Hi, everybody. Have you ever been on an audit of a software as a medical device company? In the quality world, we have ISO 1345 for medical devices, but that standard originally was geared towards manufacturers of medical devices. In 2016, they revised it and they said, well, we want to expand the scope to include other companies that would be in the medical device field. So we're going to include it to include service. So you might have companies that do maintenance and service, refurbishing of medical devices. And then we also want to include companies that are going to provide any kind of software, because software as a medical device, you don't manufacture it, you develop it and then release it. So for these companies out there that just make software as a medical device, there are some little weird things in the ISO 1345 standard that just don't fit, like incoming inspection of what? The code, it doesn't come in a box and I pull it out of the box and plug it in and test it. It doesn't work that way. I download it. So incoming inspection, kind of a weird concept to apply to a software as a medical device company. And there's a lot of other ones, but that's one of them. Sterilization validation definitely doesn't apply to software. Yeah, it's not going to grow and it's not going to cause an infection, but it's not technically sterile. It's not alive. It's not even physical. So that doesn't apply. So we're trying to figure out here what would be an appropriate quality system standard out there for software as a medical device. And there isn't one. There's just 1345. So it'd be really nice if we had one, but we don't. What we do have is a turnkey quality system at Medical Device Academy that covers all kinds of companies. And we can specifically say, these are the things that I would want a software as a medical device company to have. And the things that aren't on the list, those are the things you don't need. So out of the 50 plus procedures that we have in the quality system, there are about 34, 35 that make sense for you to have in a turnkey quality system if you're a software as a medical device manufacturer. So we're not only going to cover what those 35, 34 are, but we're also going to cover these are the ones that you need now. These are the ones you need later. So we're going to cover when you need to implement those. I don't snap my finger and I've got 35 procedures in place and everybody's trained. It doesn't work that way. I don't have magic wands. I don't have a silver platter that I can give you that, here's the secrets to everything you need to know and all the records you need, and we just plug you in. It doesn't work that way. I can't download a quality system and everything's perfect. There's some work you got to do. So here we go, walking you through this, and I'm going to share it on the screen. Okay. And I'm going to zoom it up even bigger here to help you out. There we go. So we got it full screen. So these are the ones you need now. And when I'm saying now, I'm talking to the startup medical device company that doesn't have a quality system yet. So if you don't have a quality system yet and you're developing your first medical device that's software as a medical device, you need these 4 now. You notice design controls isn't on the list. There's nothing that says that you can't put design controls in your software development procedure. And honestly, for those of you that have heard my rant about types of design control models, there's the waterfall model that's in the FDA guidance. That's from 1910. That's how we got supplies to the front lines of World War I. That predates all software, all. No question about it. It predates Hollerith punch cards. So that's not applicable. In recent times, we came up with this concept of a V diagram, and Agile and Scrum. This is Bill Gates when he was a kid era and a little bit later. That's the beginnings of software development, and it was iterative development. You make a mistake, you test, you go back, you fix, you test it again, you fix, you test, you fix, you test. It's expensive to do that when it's physical. It's cheap and fast when it's virtual in a sandbox on a computer. So, dumb terminals, mainframes, that was the way I learned how to do it. Now they do it a little differently and a lot faster and a lot cheaper, but it's still virtual. So you can put your design control process in your software validation procedure and explain it as a hybrid model. The reason why it has to be hybrid is you can do Scrum and Agile all the way up till the point where you do your regulatory submission. And now we're talking about a stage gate traditional project management process that's more like waterfall, but only from the regulatory part submission for regulatory and on. So that verification, validation, approval part, that's where we have the more stage gate. Everything up to that point is much more iterative and V-diagram. So the 4 procedures you need: risk management, software validation, usability, and cybersecurity. Keep in mind, risk management didn't exist until 2000. Software, the FDA didn't have a guidance for that, and there wasn't a standard until 2006. That's when 62304 came out first. Usability, we're looking at like 2016. And cybersecurity, that's brand new. The FDA guidance was like 2014, 15, and then they had a draft in 2018 and the final updated one in 2023. So all of these are recent in the last 20 years. So the current generations, they're not old news, they're not old school, that's now. So those are the 4 you need to start to document the development of your product. So when I ask company, do you have a design history file, and I get a blank stare, that means they're not following design controls. I'm not talking about do you follow a waterfall, just do you have a design history file even started? I require a plan. Scrum teams have plans too. It changes a lot, but the regulations say you're supposed to update your plan as the project progresses. So there's nothing wrong, nothing that eliminates planning from Agile and Scrum processes. So please come up with a plan and watch my video where I show you how to create a plan in 30 minutes or less. You can do it. Okay. The documents you should have at the beginning of the process when you're first creating this design history file, you should buy these 4 procedures or write your own or buy those 4 from somebody else. You should buy the corresponding standards. 14971. There's also an even better standard for software folks. That's the 80,002-2 standard, or sorry, 80,002-1 standard that talks about how to apply risk management 14971 to software. So there's a video about that. I would definitely get that. So that's your risk. Software, that's 62304. Usability, that's 62366. And cybersecurity, that's AMI TIR 57. So you need those 5 standards. If you have the 2 for risk, you need those 4 procedures. Whether you buy ours, somebody else's, or make your own, that's okay. And then the first 4 documents that you should be creating as sort of your inputs to the process. What is the software description? You got to describe it so we know what we're coding, what we're trying to design here for software. We've got to explain what the architecture diagram is going to look like. This is a critical strategic design. It's not something you just throw up on there in 10 minutes. It's a critical strategic design because you have to design it for security, and you have to identify what functions of the software in your architecture are going to be non-device functions, which ones are going to be low risk, class A, which ones are going to be medium risk, class B, and if you have a life-threatening, life-supporting device, is there a class C component to this software? And instead of writing all your documentation to one of those classifications, you write the documentation for the module articulated in the architecture and the software description to the level of risk of that particular module. So that's how you should be thinking about architecture diagrams. Next, you have a risk management plan. The risk management plan is now required in the FDA eStar as well. It used to just be a hazard analysis for software. Now they want the risk management file, the whole file, including at a minimum the plan, the hazard analysis, and the risk management report. But your plan should identify what activities there are going to be. So your hazard identification, it would be your next thing after your plan. The next thing after that would be identifying risk controls for your software, and then would be iterative testing to verify the effectiveness of the risk controls and the completeness. You do a benefit risk analysis, and you do a final risk management report when you're all done. And now you have the elements. So there's Even though the FDA says we only want at minimum these three things, you should really have a lot more. And then the last thing you should have is an SRS. And a lot of people are like, well, we're not done developing our software, so we don't have an SRS. Wrong thinking. Don't think that way. An SRS is a living document. Just like your risk analysis is your risk management file, that's a living file. Your architecture diagram may change over time too. Your software description changes over. All these documents are living documents that will change as you find bugs, as you update patches, as you update drivers, as you change your operating system, as you change the hardware that it runs on. Like, it's no longer running on Android, it's now running on an iPhone, it's running on a tablet. We have a new version, it has new features, it has different speeds, all these things. They change your software, so you have to change your documents. But your SRS should be drafted. I mean, right out of the gate, you should be able to list the 8 minimum requirement documents, the risk controls that you have to have for cybersecurity. There are 8 risk controls they want for cybersecurity. They should all be in your SRS right out of the gate. And your software is supposed to do something. So there's a requirement. What does it do? There's a requirement. So we get 9 right out of the gate before we even think about it. It doesn't matter what it is. It has to have at least those 9. So that's what you need to start right at the beginning. So if you don't have a plan, you don't have a description, you don't have an architecture diagram, you don't have a draft SRS, you don't have these procedures, you haven't started really doing anything yet. You're playing. So stop playing and run a company correctly. You have to create a design history file. Start at the beginning. It's so much harder to retroactively create this documentation. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next page. So a lot of software as a medical device companies have to have a clinical study. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of CRO people out there, CRCs, CRAs would say, I'm wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. Practically speaking here, yes, you need a quality system. Do you need every single procedure that's required for a quality system? Do you need ISO 1345 certification? No and no. There are certain things you don't need. For example, do I really absolutely have to have an MDR reporting procedure if the hospital is the one that has to do the reporting? Can I even have some of these procedures if I'm not registered with the FDA yet because I don't have 510K or de novo yet? No. So some of these things I could have a procedure, but I can't follow the procedure yet. So there are certain things I really, really need, and there are certain things that I will need later. So this page, if I'm doing a clinical study, yes, I should have document control. It's not really a quality system if I don't have doc control. I should have record control. I could combine those two in one procedure if I wanted. I need quality system records and I need controlled release documents. I need training records. Yes, so I need a training procedure. I need change control. So if I make a change, I have some sort of control over that change and I track it. I went from version 1.0 to version 1.1. I went to 2.0. I implemented a patch and we implemented that change and we controlled it in some way. Same thing for labeling, same thing for instructions, training, all these different things. Design controls is something I ought to have. If you want to combine that with your software validation, go right ahead. Nothing wrong with that. Clinical investigation. If you're going to do a clinical study, you need a clinical investigation procedure. Even if you're outsourcing it, you would still control it under your supplier quality management, which is the next procedure. You should have complaint handling, because even though you're not going to necessarily report this to the FDA, the hospital would report adverse events. If you have somebody at the hospital or wherever you're doing the study report that there's a bug of your software, or there's a vulnerability or some problem, they can't upload it, they can't download it, they can't update it, whatever it is, that's a complaint. It's an alleged malfunction of your device. I know it's software, but anything they allege there's something wrong, even if they're not smart enough to buy your product, it's still okay to say it's an alleged malfunction. Later on, you do the investigation, you may determine, we really do have a problem with our product, or we maybe have an interoperability issue with their hardware configuration or their software configuration. Not that that ever happens, or sarcasm intended. But the other possibility here is that you could have a use error. We call it a use error instead of a user error because people make mistakes. It's not intuitive to them. It's intuitive to the designer that knows coding and plays with that software all the time, not necessarily intuitive to the person that owns the iPhone and is trying to figure out how to make your software work. So complaint handling is something you should do, and you should record it as a complaint. It's an alleged malfunction, and then you investigate it, determine what the root cause is, and then take appropriate action. And the FDA looks for that, particularly when you do a clinical study. So you need to have complaint handling. You should have a CAPA. That's how you follow up on the complaint. You implement root cause investigation, corrections containment, corrective actions, even preventive actions. You should have labeling control. You're actually asked, you have to control your labels that go to the clinical site. They have to say investigational device use only on them. If you're doing an animal study, you would say animal use only. If it would be a human factor study, you would indicate that it's not for human use. It's for simulation only. It's for only this study. So you want to label it appropriately, and you want to keep track of that labeling version, because you always have to make changes as you go through your usability study. You find out things that people didn't understand, and you have to update and improve your labeling, and you're required to show what version did you use in your usability study, what version did you use in your clinical study, what version are you submitting now as your 510K or de novo. And then the last piece I have on here is a medical device file. And it may seem like it's too early for that, but it takes time to build a medical device file. So don't figure out how to do that at the end. Figure out how to do it at the beginning before you release it as a prototype for a clinical study. Okay? So those are the things, the 11 that you need there. So we have 4 before, 11 here. We're at 15. So we're about halfway through. Now we go down to the next section. So these are the SOPs, the procedures that you need before you do FDA registration. So you're supposed to have all your procedures in place before you register and list with the FDA. Now, will you explode or spontaneously combust if you don't? No, that's not how it works. There are a lot of people out there. I have clients that have not done all their paperwork and not gotten all their procedures, and they call me sometimes while the FDA is there. The FDA is going to be there next week. The FDA was here last week. I get all of the above. We don't have procedures. We don't really have procedures. We got some from somebody else. We didn't take their name off it. We didn't train on it, blah, blah, blah. So you don't have an effective quality system. You're missing procedures. Even big companies have problems with quality system procedures. So we have a list here of 19 procedures that a software as a medical device company should consider. You absolutely have to have every single one of these. Really, kind of, yeah, you really should have them all. If you're in the US, you need a procedure for ESG, the Electronic Submissions Gateway. But do you need it before you register? No, because you really don't need it until you get something that is a complaint. But the FDA doesn't want you to have, they don't want you to wait until you have an adverse event and then get an ESG. They want you to have it proactively. So the way I like to describe it is you don't need that until you could have a complaint. So if you haven't shipped anything yet, you haven't released it, you can't have a complaint yet. So you don't need it yet. But as soon as you start shipping it, now you could have a complaint and you do need that procedure in place. But you might never use it because you might not have a hazardous situation that can result from software that could result in serious injury or harm. So therefore, ESG is one of the latest things you need. Another one would be recalls. Until you start a distribution, you can't do a recall. So recalls goes way down the list. That's number 20 on our list. But all these procedures, do you have to implement them in the order I have them? No. But in general, what we tell people is shoot for 1 or 2 a week. So the 19 that we have here plus the 15 that we had before, that's a total of 34. If you have those 34 procedures and you do 1 a week, that's 34 weeks. If you cut it in half with 2 a week, you're at 17 weeks. If you're looking for a 6-month implementation, that would be 26 weeks. 4 weeks would be 6. If you had 4 months, that would be 16 weeks. So 4 months is what we normally tell people. That would be 2 a week. And if they're going to do it slower, it'd be 6 weeks or more. 6 months or more. So somewhere in there, the 4 to 6 months is what you should plan on. But you might have a gap in between. You're doing the development, and then later on, you're doing the clinical study, and then finally, you're doing your commercialization. So you sort of have 3 phases to your quality system implementation. And people are like, well, why do you have the clinical stuff in there? That's just software. A lot of software as a medical device is software that does automatic detection, automatic identification of areas of interest, triage, so CAD-E, CAD-X, triage, those things require clinical data. You can't do those without clinical data. So you probably are going to have some clinical data involved in your SaMD quality system. So that's why I have, these are the ones that I would have in place for my clinical work, and these are the ones that I would have before commercialization. And so it gives you a prioritization, but some of these are more important than others. Like auditing, I probably wouldn't do auditing until the end, because otherwise I'm going to be doing audits and say, well, you don't have that process, so I'll skip to the next one. So I'd save auditing to the very end. I'd save recalls to the very end. I'd save conducting FDA inspection to the very, very, very end. But some of these other ones, like custom-related processes, I want that before I'm taking any orders. I want to know how I'm going to process the order from the customer and how I'm going to deliver the product to them. I want to know how my tech support's going to work and how people are going to have Q&A when they have trouble uploading the software into their iPhone, when it says very clearly on it that it's for Android only. So you need to make sure that you decide which procedures you need, when you need them. And this is what my quality system would look like. And I would probably combine design controls with software if it were me. So that would mean I have 33 instead of 34. I'd probably combine document control and record control, and I'd do everything as digital documents, electronic documents and signatures. So that would probably cut one more off. So I'm down to 32 now. You get the idea. I could probably combine the ESG work instruction with the medical device reporting procedure 29. So that'd be one more down. So I'm now down to 31. So if you want to have fewer procedures, you're just going to do some editing and consolidation of some of these. But that's how I would handle it if I were going to have a software as a medical device quality system that was really geared towards just software companies. And there's a whole lot of clauses that are just not applicable to a software as a medical device company. And it'd be nice if we had a standard that was geared towards that. So instead of a half dozen times or so mentioning software, it really was all about software as a medical device. And you'd have some very different clauses in there if you did that. So maybe the TC210 committee will sometime take that on and actually create a standard just for that, because I think it would be very valuable. Or create some variant, like here's what I would do for products with software in a medical device, here's what I do for sterile products, and here's what I would do for software as a medical device. But that makes the standard a lot more complicated. So that's why I think they would probably create a separate standard for software as a medical device, but none in the books as far as I know. So there's my ideas. Tell me yours, put them in the comments down below. And if you have any questions about anything you saw on here, I saved it as a Google Doc, and we can certainly, hey, you want to buy these? We have a turnkey quality system. We offer these. They could be delivered to you tomorrow. Have a great day and a great weekend. Bye-bye.